Hi, everyone. I'm James Protin. I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for the podcast, Candlelore's Barking Beauties, with 5 locations throughout the region, and His Place Coffee Community and more here in Menneson for hosting us.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Candelore, owner of Candlelore's Barking Beauties, where our salon is your salon. We have 5 convenient locations, no appointment needed. All breeds welcome. Any size dog. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. We have 5 convenient locations: Elizabeth, White Oak, Finleyville, Monongahela, and Irwin. Love to have you visit us.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We are back in the friendly confines of His Place Coffee Community and more in Menneson, PA. Nick and I have been on the road a good bit this summer, so it's been a while since we've actually done a show here. But we're very happy to be back. These people have been so gracious in hosting us and giving us everything that we could possibly need in this little studio space we have. And they are celebrating their 1-year anniversary in a couple of weeks, September 13th, actually. So they're going to be doing a lot of really cool activities and have basically a week-long celebration. So if you have any interest in coming down to Menneson and checking them out, this would be a good time to do it. So our guest today is one I've been looking forward to for quite some time. And today is going to be a little bit of a different show than what we normally do because the topics are going to be much more serious than anything that we've ever discussed. So Alia Wiant is our guest today for episode number 28. And Alia is your typical middle-aged woman. She's happily married to the love of her life and raising her 4 children. And Alia has the biggest heart that you'll ever find. She's the first to volunteer for a good cause and to stand up for what's right. And she will always, and I mean always, be the first to lend a helping hand to anyone in need. Most people know Alia as a kind, loving, and genuinely happy person, and she is for the most part, to the world outside at least. It's the world inside that makes her different, because what people don't see on the surface of this amazing woman is the battle that's being waged on the inside, a battle that she deals with daily. So Alia, welcome to the show, and we're thrilled to have you here. So how are you? How's everything going?
It's going. I'm hanging in there.
Good.
I'm excited to finally do this. I've talked about it a few times, but I think I'm finally ready. Maybe
You've
we'll
come
see how
and
it
been
goes.
part of the our studio audience.
Yep.
We don't have anybody here today, but so you're very familiar with what we do, and you know, as I mentioned in the intro, you are the mom of 4 kids, one of which is out of list, and most people would look at you and not realize that you have children that are 19, 17, and 14 because you don't look old enough to have those children. But
Yes.
So that's been an interesting journey for you.
Yes. So technically, I have 4, but
Right.
I also have 3 stepchildren that were kind of like the Brady Bunch. So my oldest daughter is 26, then 24, then 19, 18, 17, skip a little bunch, and 2 14.
So and actually, it's 2 19s now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot to keep track of.
His birthday was last week, so yes, you're right. It was 219.
Yes, but that's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious about this because, you know, I know the blending of a blended family is something that is not an easy thing to do. And the Brady Bunch is a TV show. And when you see, 7 children, and, you know, the oldest one being 26, you're not all that much older than her,
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dynamic. And one of the things that impresses me, and I know anybody and everybody that knows you, is how you've been able to blend that together, because it was so seamless when it happened. From my perspective, it almost happened overnight. And I have to remind myself that it was really years in the making, right?
It was. So they were friends before Jameson and I actually started dating. We had ran a football program together. And what ended up working out really well was that our children had already known each other. So they were able to form friendships, which then turned into bonds once we were able to decide that we were ready to be in a relationship. I think the kids probably knew before we did, but you know, they kind of helped us along in that process, maybe see it a little bit before, you know, and we ended up getting there.
Good. That's
but
awesome.
They are very, it was very easy for us. They are very cool with each other. And we do say sometimes that it is like the TV show, because while they do have their battles like brothers and sisters, it is just like brothers and sisters. There's no, you know, his family, her family, battles between, you know, they take this side, they take that side. That's just not how it is. And we're really lucky that that's how everything is. And my husband and I have said that from day one. We treat each other's children as our own. And because we do, I think that has a lot to do with it also.
I think so. And I think, you know, from your perspective and your background, you come from a divorce. You're a child of a divorce, and you were a teenager when all that happened. But one of the great things about the example that set for you, because, you know, divorce is never easy, but when it's done right, if it can be done right, okay, your mother did it right. You know, that was something that is impressive to me about her, because there is so much of her in you. And I know you don't like to always admit that, but
I don't always admit it. But yeah, so when my parents got divorced, at first, you know, typical divorce, but then over time, my mom and my stepdad and my dad and my stepmom made it very clear that everywhere we went, everything we did all together. Everyone was included, and there was to be no ill will towards anyone. That's just how we were. And my kids, as children growing up, knew that they had a whole bunch of grandparents, and that no matter which event they went to or a birthday party, everybody was there. And that's just how it was.
I think whenever your kids were little, they had the world record for grandparents.
They did. They did.
There was, I mean, some of them have passed, God bless them, but they were the world record holders for grandparents.
Yeah, they were very proud of the fact that
they were. And they were proud of that.
Yeah, a lot of kids are like, "Oh, I have one grandma," and they're like, "I have 14." It was like one of those, you know, it works.
Yeah. It did work, and a lot of that is to your credit. And you know, you're married to a great guy now. You have found each other, and you know, that's a beautiful thing, and you work it together. Okay. And one of the things I love the most about you is that you love genuinely and completely. Again, like your mother, and there's no condition. Right. And
there is no condition.
You know, when your ex-husband got into another relationship after your divorce, and had a child, a little guy who is the half brother to your 4 kids, you didn't hesitate to welcome him into the mix, and he has just morphed right into it, where he's just
like, part of the crew.
Yeah, and there's really no. There's no separation there. And one of the things that impresses me about your husband is that he never skipped a beat with that, and he's accepted it. And this little dude, my dude, is just one of the group, like you said. And you've also added in a son-in-law now, and soon to add in the next 9 months or so another son-in-law. So the reason I'm saying all this is that you manage all this, you manage it with such grace and just empathy and caring and patience. All the while, I mentioned this battle raging in you. And because I know you so well, I know the depth of that battle. And most people look at you, first of all, would not believe that you're sick in any way. Okay, and we're going to delve into, but you have a combination of illnesses that are invisible, number one, which is a hurdle in itself, but also are, in most people, 100% debilitating. But yet you still function, and not only function, you thrive. And so what I want to start with, and it's a bit of a dark subject, but it's something that I know very well, is depression and chronic depression. And this is a very serious illness and a subject that you and I have discussed at length, and neither one of us takes lightly. And that's why I was excited. If you can be excited about a dark topic like that, but I was excited to have this conversation because you have a depth of knowledge and feeling that, aside from the clinical space, right? Because neither one of us are doctors, but living it, okay, it makes you an expert.
It does. And honestly, unless you have lived it, it is very difficult to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And not that people don't try, but it is just something that until you've been in that place and you deal with it every day, it's very difficult. It's not that they're not empathetic to you. It's just it's hard for them
Mm-hmm.
to comprehend how a mind could work like that.
Sure.
And I've tried over time to explain to people, I've mentioned it to certain people. And the people that I've mentioned it to, most of them have reacted oddly, in my opinion.
Okay.
I have had responses like, "Oh, but life's not that bad," and I'm like,
Right.
"No, it's not how that is."
Sure.
And then you get the, "Well, what made you sad?" It's mental illness, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, any of those they're an actual illness.
Right.
It is not something that can be worse. It's not something that can be better. It's something, just like, I'm going to use diabetes for an example.
Mm-hmm.
You take your medicine, okay? You take your insulin, you take your medicine, and it gets better with those things.
Sure.
But stress can cause your sugar to go up. Okay, just like stress on a situation can cause certain things to make your depression worse.
Doesn't get cured. There's not a cure. You don't get better to the point. You learn, and I don't want to say you learn to live with it, but you learn to manage it.
Correct.
Right?
Just like diabetes, it's something you learn to manage. It's not something that you can just cure. It's not something that one day you're going to wake up and it's going to be fixed. You have to know that you're in this for the long haul, and you have to be prepared that you're going to fight it every single day. There are
And you're
days,
pretty much going to fight it alone.
Yeah, you pretty much have to fight it alone.
Right.
Yeah, because there isn't, you can have a support person, and that helps, but this is all on you. There are days where you're not going to want to get out of bed. You're just not. And a lot of people take that as lazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of people see that as, she just doesn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are people who cannot clean their house. They don't take showers. Those things are very big symptoms
Mm-hmm.
of depression, those, they're not just lazy,
Right.
and I think a lot of people see people doing those things and write them off and say, it's fine. She's just, so lazy that she's not taking care of herself.
Mm.
And I think we need to be more aware,
Right.
because you may have someone in your home or someone who is way more depressed than you think. And that's a very risky thing.
Oh, because it's an illness you can't see.
Correct.
And I was thinking about you. I wrote something in my blog this morning from my own journey and struggles with depression, that I look at it as you're standing on the edge of this precipice, right? You're right on the edge and you're looking into this darkness, and it's just that there's nothing to see. It's just completely black. You're right on the edge, right? But right behind you is also joy and happiness and life and love and all those things. And you have to talk your way off that ledge, and go back over to this, right? So when you see that darkness is always there. It's always there, just like the light and the love and all those things are here too. And the battle that you fight, we get, is blending those two things together and coexisting between those two sides of,
Yes.
And that's what depression is.
Yes. And it's some days you want to go to the dark side, if that's how, it's just way easier. And, it's not giving up or giving in. It's just sometimes you just can't. And there's nothing you can do. You just need, the depression is stronger that day, and you just need a break. And there are also days where you wake up and you feel fantastic.
Sure.
But there are times where you make plans and you're so excited, and then it's an hour before you're ready to leave and you're like, I can't do it.
Yeah. I think that's a big deal. And, and I think a lot of people, a lot more people than most would think, suffer from depression, literal depression. But I think there's such a stigma around mental illness and mental health that they keep it inside. And so my question is, do you think it's possible, talking about that darkness, right? Do you think it's possible for someone in your position, to find comfort in that darkness, right? It's there, you understand it. And do you think it's possible that on those days where you just don't want to get out of bed, that you're finding a little bit of solace or comfort in that dark place?
Oh, absolutely. I do find comfort in just hiding in my dark place. I do. I actually feel very comfortable in my dark place. And more times than not, I would rather be in my dark place. But the things that pull me out, my children, things that have to be done, it's the little things sometimes that will pull me, and it's like, okay, I don't have a choice. I have to do this. And it pushes you to do what you need to do.
Right.
There isn't always things you want to do, because usually the things you want to do, that won't get you out of your dark place. Right. It's the things that you need to do.
And as a mom, you need to show up every single day.
Correct.
You don't have to show up at 100%, but you have to show up.
Right.
There are no days off.
Correct.
Right. And, even though, again, your two older daughters are pretty much on their own, but when you think about it, including you have 6 kids at various stages of life.
Right.
Who need you to show up.
Right.
Okay. And do you think that the kids, I know they're all very in tune with what we're talking about. They get it because they're very connected to you, right? even the ones that you didn't give birth to, they're very connected to you because you have that reach. You touch people with that heart of yours, and they get it. Like, do you think that they really understand, or is it more of, well, that's my mom, and whatever we need to do, we're going to do?
So I think some of them understand. I think some of them understand more than others. I also think that the ones that do understand are usually the ones that, okay, we got to go do this. Or, hey, I really need you to do this. You got to get out of bed. You got to do this.
Right.
And then there's some that are like, okay, we got to leave mom alone, give her an hour, and then she'll be able to handle it.
Let her catch up.
Let her catch up for a little bit, And it's funny how each kid gives you a different version of what they think you need.
Sure, absolutely. And I think, depression in young people, the way it manifests in me at almost 63 years old is completely different than how it comes out in you. And again, different yet in somebody in their teens or 20s. And I think it's more difficult to deal with as you get younger in age, because when you're a teenager, when you're in your 20s, you're supposed to be happy and having fun. This is the best time of your life.
Yep.
Right? And I think a lot of people write that off, okay, as maybe a little sad about something, but depression isn't sadness.
No.
You just because you have depression doesn't mean you're sad about anything. You don't have to be sad at all.
Right. No, you can be very joyful and still have depression. It's an actual illness. It's something in your brain. That does not mean you can't have fun. That does not mean you can't enjoy your children or your life. It's just different, and I can't tell you the amount of days where I laugh hysterically at the group of children that I have. And I say all the time, like, as long as you're laughing more than you're crying, it's a good day.
Sure.
But
you don't avoid the crying either. You don't avoid the tears. You have to feel everything.
I do. I have to feel it all. I can't just keep putting it away. And for a really long time, I did. I just kept pushing it under.
And that made it worse.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That made it a lot worse.
The scope of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It took me a really long time to get to this point to where I can openly talk about it. Because there is such a big stigma around this whole subject.
Sure. And it's often ignored, right? I mean, intentionally, when people talk about wellness, they talk about physical fitness, about nutrition, about all these things. And most often, mental health is not included in wellness, right? And it needs to be.
Yeah, it is so important. And when you go and you do start to talk to someone, you are terrified they're going to tell someone that you don't want to know, or
they're going to judge you and things like
exactly. That. And immediately I canceled this podcast probably about 3 or 4 times.
Yes, you
and
did.
The reason why I did was because I kept saying, I don't know how I feel about putting this out there, like how much. And then finally I'm like, okay, like now I'm being the people that I don't want to be. Like I need to set the example that, it doesn't matter if somebody's judging you,
right?
Because you need to be able to put yourself out there. You need to show others that it's okay to put yourself out there. And if people judge you, then they really aren't your friends.
Well, and that's on them, not you.
Yeah,
that's a reflection of
that's
them.
A reflection of them and the people that they are, not of who you are.
And I was surprised when you sent me the text and said you're ready, right? And I was like, okay. And I know there were some very personal triggers that got you to send that text, and we don't need to get into all of that. But the fact that you've walked this path now, going back to the beginning, right? You were not depressed as a teenager. Do you feel
really.
that you were? I think
it was like underlying, maybe.
Yeah, see, I didn't see it, but I didn't realize my own situation at that time, right? And looking back now, I know that I actually was. Okay. So, but do you feel that this is something that started, in other words, do you feel there's any connection to your parents' divorce, your teenage years, this, that, or the other? Or is this something that came to you as you've gotten older? You know, how did you feel that, where did this all come from?
So I've always...
You didn't wake up just one day, wake up and be depressed.
No, yeah, like
right?
it just didn't come on. At first, I would never have said that I was depressed as a child. After learning what it looks like and what has, like, now that I know, I'm like, oh yeah, I was like that a little bit as a kid. It just didn't register to me. I used to have stomach aches every morning when I would go to school. Never in a million years did I think that that would have been anxiety. Never. But I had it and just didn't know that that was a thing back then. Even through high school, still just didn't click. It wasn't there. After I graduated, I got pregnant with my first daughter.
Can I interject one thing? Instead of you gave up a graduation party to have a bridal shower.
I did. So
which is, that's an important distinction for you, because you were years ahead here and here from where you actually were.
Yeah. So
right?
I actually got engaged my birthday that I turned 18. And so I was engaged half of my senior year, and we didn't do prom or a graduation party because I had a bridal shower. So I actually graduated in June, got married in July, and then found out I was pregnant in August. But was totally excited, didn't think anything of it. So happy. Like, even after we had Emma, I mean, she was just the best baby. I went back to work.
All right.
Luckily, I had all those grandparents. So my great-grandparents actually is who watched her. And around a little after a year, I got pregnant again. Not planned, but not planned. And during that pregnancy, I didn't feel right. And I kept saying, my heart's racing. And they were like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, no, really, like, you can feel it, like, my heart's racing. So we went to my OBGYN, and he's like, I don't think that's right. So I go upstairs to the cardiologist, and he's like, I have some really bad news. He's like, your heart's functioning at 20%. And I was just blown away. I remember.
So now you're 20 years old and you're pregnant.
20 years old.
And you have
a 1-year-old.
A 1-year-old at home.
Correct. So at the doctor appointment, I had the 1-year-old on my lap, and I'm sitting there, and I remember him coming in and just sitting down and saying, I have some really bad news, but your heart is functioning at 20%. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, obviously that's bad for me, but what does that mean for the baby? What does that mean in general? Like, I was just completely blown away. And I said, I gotta go home because, like, I gotta go talk to my mom. And he's like, okay. And I was like, we'll come back, but, like, I gotta go home. So, we went home and we talked about everything, and I was just terrified. So then we made another appointment the next day, and we kind of found out where we were. At the time, my daughter was 22 weeks. And they said, if you can make it 2 more weeks, because their original suggestion was to terminate the pregnancy, which I just didn't feel comfortable doing.
Okay.
I think to each their own, but
Sure.
personally, I couldn't do it. So they said, if you make it 2 more weeks, you can have her, and then she'll be high risk in the NICU, but then we can begin working on you and
Treating
getting
you.
under. Yeah.
Right.
Because the biggest thing was that, like, we didn't know how long the heart thing would last. So I ended up making it pretty far. I was the first patient to deliver in ICU, which I thought, I literally checked into ICU, which I thought was pretty cool. Nobody else in my family thought that was cool. They're all like,
No,
yeah,
it was.
yeah, they were all terrified. I thought it was kind of cool. But it was a very high risk delivery, and it went as smooth as possible. And I was like, okay. For a couple weeks, I did really well. And then I could just feel myself not being able to breathe. Like, all of a sudden it just happened.
That's when the wheels kind of fell off.
Yeah. So they rushed me to Presby. And it was me, my mom, and the 2 girls. And the doctor came in and he's like, all I can tell you is that we can give you 4 to 6 weeks. And then we're probably looking at a heart transplant. And
so let's 1 second. Let's take a breath here. It's okay. So this is a lot. And I know it's a lot for people, but so
yeah.
at this point, you're 21, you've got 2 small children, 2 girls, and you've been given an expiration date for all intents and purposes because they told you that, you're looking at a heart transplant, which was the only alternative. I think what you told me, it was they would try a pacemaker, they would try this, but ultimately they basically told you to expect a heart transplant at some point.
Right.
And I think the way you said it was that they told you that they would do everything they could to get you to 40 years old so you could see your girls graduate from high school. That's a lot for anybody, let alone a young mother at 21.
Well, so once I got past my 4 to 6 week mark, they let me come in every 3 weeks, and I did an echocardiogram. And then after I graduated my 3 months, I got to start going to 6 months. And it was kind of really weird because it was like, constantly with the heart monitors, constantly going for the heart. And I'm not complaining because I'm still here. But it was a lot to take on as a new mom with a toddler and an infant. And you're basically not sure when you're going to just kill over.
Right.
And I can remember a doctor saying, most likely it will be pain-free and fast. And I thought, well, that's good, And then I'm like laying in bed one night and thinking, I just tucked my daughters into bed. What if it happens through the night? And like, I don't see them when they wake up. I'm gone. And they're so confused. And I just couldn't get over the idea of that. At no point from then on, every day for me was terrifying. Literally terrifying. But I kept going over and over and over. And as you kept going longer, past your six months, and then you got to 12 months. And once you hit those 12 months appointments, I was living large. And that's when he said, I think you're doing pretty good. And I was like, okay. He's like, medicine's stable. And I'm like, okay. I was like on average, how many years do you think? And he's like, I will do my best to get you to 40 so you can see them graduate. And I'm like, deal. Like, if you give me to 40, I'll be happy. But at the same time, to have someone say, I'll do my best to get you to 40.
Oh, that's a punch in the gut,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
I mean, and I know you still carry that with you, even though you've, by all accounts, with cardiomyopathy, which we should say that's what. So you have basically two illnesses. There's not a cure for either one, and
Correct.
you're showing up every day, and you're being a mom, a great mom, but you're still carrying that. I mean, a lot of people would be on their knees by now.
Yeah. I really don't have a choice. The cardiomyopathy itself, also invisible. So, I would be short of breath. I would be just my heart pounding out of my chest and wouldn't be able to walk up steps. And people would I didn't know how to explain it. It's
Right.
just, sorry, my heart doesn't work. I can't do that. And I know people for a long time would be like, oh, she's definitely lazy. And the word lazy to me used to make me infuriated because it's like,
Oh, sure.
how can you don't know anything about me.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not supposed to lift things. Well, that didn't happen because I didn't want to look lazy. So, I didn't want to be weak.
Right.
And I didn't want to miss out on anything with my kids. So I pushed through the cardiomyopathy. Most people, my close people, knew. Most people would have had no clue.
Sure. And I think, I would hear at different events people thinking that you were aloof or, not social, where you were just basically trying to breathe and trying to function. And, I've seen you in those type of social situations. You're a very social person, and that perception of others, right, is something that has to be difficult to deal with, because sitting here looking at you, you're a young, vital, beautiful, attractive, intelligent, articulate person who nobody on earth would believe that the things we're talking about are seriously debilitating things. Nobody would believe you have these things. I know you do because I know you personally. But how do you deal with those people who, we talked about the laziness, but you look not only like you're surviving, but you're thriving. And you're still very sick.
Yeah. So I do my very best to make sure that no one knows that the heart thing, the cardiomyopathy, is happening, because technically right now it is stable. By stable, I mean that it's working at about 50%.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Where are you in as far as function?
Right. So right now I'm at about 50%.
Now, and we're almost 20 years down the road.
Right. So I actually had an ablation done.
Okay.
Because I was having so many arrhythmias that they did an ablation, and it actually really helped my heart function. They didn't think it would. It was just like a total fluke, but it really helped my heart function. So I went from 35% up to almost 50%.
After the procedure.
Okay. So I'm not quite 50, but I like to lean towards the 50 number. I like to push it up a little bit. But, so the fact that it's there, I just keep the idea that I was so much worse at one point that in my mind, it just doesn't exist anymore. It's just something that I can push through and not think of. And unless it's, hey, I'm having chest pain or something like that. But I do have to be smart about it, obviously, with COVID or with a cold.
Sure.
or even with the flu, I have to be extra precautious because
Well, that would impact you and has impacted you a lot differently than healthy people,
right.
right? So even though you look healthy, you're not. And
Yeah, those kinds of things. Yeah.
so how do you process all of this, right? So now we've talked about all the children. We've talked about the depression, the anxiety, cardiomyopathy. Holy crap, that's a lot to carry.
Yeah, it is. It's a day-to-day thing. Some days it's okay, and some days I do not want to get out of my bed. But the days where, you have 4 or 5 events going on that you have to be at, you just have to push through and
Sure.
you have to do it. And you have to do it with a smile on your face, and you have to do it so that your kids, no one knows, because you don't want to embarrass your kids, and not that your kids would be embarrassed, because I don't think mine would, but I also don't want my kids to have to explain
Sure.
why I look the way I look, or why I'm not there. And
Right.
I also do not want to miss anything.
And that comes from not really 100% believing that you're going to be there for everything, and,
Right.
and that's heavy. That's
It
very
is.
heavy.
It is. For years and years and years, holidays were horrifying for me because I was convinced it was my last Christmas with them. It was my last Mother's Day with them, and it was my last birthday with them. And everyone's like, why are you going so far and above? And I'm like, because I don't know that I'm going to be here to
Sure.
do
Sure.
next year. And, I had so much guilt about that. And I think I'm starting to get better about the guilt. It's still there though. That I feel I need to overcompensate for a lot of the things that, even though I was okay, kinda, and I was there, I feel like my older two had a little bit less of a childhood because there were things that I was limited to do.
Sure. And, well, yeah, because, when you think about at that point in your life, and I know from conversations that we had that you actually felt guilty because you were convinced you weren't going to be there for Emma and Liv, right? And you carried a lot of guilt because you were sick.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I am grateful that I did, and sometimes I think, oh, like I really missed out, but then when I see it, I'm grateful. When I got diagnosed, I made sure that Emma and my mother had an extremely close relationship. I wanted my mother and Emma to be equally as close, or for them to be more close than I was, because I did not want Emma to have to go through that as a toddler. I wanted her to be able to just pick up my mom, step in, everything be okay. Now, I'm still here. So that makes it a little tricky because Emma is still very close. They do have that bond.
They do. They have a unique bond.
They do. And sometimes it's kind of like Emma's my sister and she doesn't really want to listen to me. But at the same time, seeing that bond that they have, I do not regret that decision, because had something happened, that was the right decision to make.
It was the right decision to make. And what you did was create an opportunity for Emma to have a relationship with her grandmother that most kids never have.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And keep in mind one thing too. In your defense, Emma was 43 years old at 2.
Yeah.
Okay. She's unique in that respect. Yeah. And but I want to talk about your mom for a minute. Okay. Well, for a couple minutes, and you can speak freely because she doesn't watch the show. We've already established that.
Okay.
We've published 27 episodes, Nick, 27 shows, and she's never seen one.
Okay.
But that's okay. I'm not real hurt about it. Nick takes that harder than I do. But so let's talk about your mom for a minute. And I want to say one thing, but I want you to talk freely about your thoughts. But your mom is, without a doubt, the strongest human I've ever met. Okay. She gives more than what she ever should, more than what she ever receives in return. And she does it willingly and happily and with love from her heart. And again, like I said, I know you don't like to hear it, but there is so much of your mom in you. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've imparted that. And between the two of you, Emma and Liv, now, who are 19 and 17, are following that same path. And those two young ladies are going to be able to handle anything that life throws their way because of you and your mom. But tell me a little bit about your relationship with your mom. I mean, no mother-daughter relationship is always sunshine and rainbows, but you guys have a unique bond yourselves as well.
So my relationship with my mom, it's just an understood relationship. It's like, I know that if I need her, and she knows that if she needs me, then we just complement each other. Like, it's one of those things. And it could be the dumbest thing ever, but it just works. My mother is more like my grandfather than anyone I've ever met. And my mother and I, well, actually all of us were crushed when my grandfather passed, because he was everything. Mm-hmm. And she has stepped into that role.
Yes, she has.
In our family. And I try to do some of this stuff. The stuff that I'm allowed to do. But, and it's cool because my pap taught my mom and my mom taught me, and now I'm teaching Chloe, and mm-hmm. So it's very cool to see that, like, being passed down, and because had my mom never taught me, had she not taken the time, because I'm sure I wasn't like a real quick learner. But, my mom works hard. Everything has to be perfect. She doesn't. Sure. She doesn't just say, "Oh, yeah, that's good enough." That is not in her vocabulary.
Right.
She needs it to be done right. And I used to think that was just crazy. And now I'm the same way. I think it also needs to be done right, or why do it at all?
Sure.
So it's comical how different I am as an adult, and how funny it is that Emma is now also like that. So, my mom kind of helped the situation as far as, you don't have a choice to be strong.
Right.
She just she's naturally strong. So you don't have a choice. You have to be strong. That's just built into us, that it just that's what you do.
Did you get any inspiration, for lack of a better word, from your mom's own health struggles? Because much like, the cardiomyopathy hit you out of nowhere, her diabetes hit her from nowhere. No explanation. She's type 1 diabetic, with insulin dependent, all those things, which came completely out of nowhere when she was around your age now. but she hasn't missed a beat. She keeps. So did that give you inspiration or motivation to just, like you said, you just
keep
shoulder
going.
up and keep going?
Yeah, see, it's really odd because when the diabetes happened, it was the weirdest thing ever. And I can remember I was maybe a little younger than this. And I can remember her saying, yeah, like, I'm always thirsty and my eyes are blurry. And I'm like, okay. Like, we just couldn't figure out what was going on. And then they said about type 2 diabetes. And I'm like, that's not possible. You're not built like somebody that has type 2 diabetes. It just doesn't
you don't check any boxes.
No, it just doesn't. So her endocrinologist is like, well, I think you have type 1, but you are usually born with type 1. So it took a while to figure everything out. And she just kept rolling with the punches. It was like medicine didn't work. Try this medicine, that didn't work. Try insulin. That poor woman has been on so many different insulins. She's been on pumps. I'm gonna knock on wood, she's doing pretty good right now. But if it's too high, too low, she doesn't hesitate to just deal with it and go.
Yeah.
Her sugar will drop and she feels like you can see her just crash. And she'll lay down for about 10 minutes and then she's up and cutting the grass. And it just is just, okay, that's just normal. And some of that I don't have all that yet. I keep thinking maybe it's going to kick in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so having that as a role model, it's a pretty big thing.
That's huge, and I'm happy to hear you say that because I know that I know how she feels about you, and seeing you do what you do and follow that makes her incredibly proud and happy, and it makes her feel good, right? So I want to talk about one more person in particular, okay? And that is your husband. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but you guys have been together a good while, married a little over a year. And he's like 9-10 years older than you. Okay. And a good dad, a good man, good all the way around. I was very happy when you met him because he has been a stabilizing influence on you. Okay. And I'm able to see from where I sit looking at you guys, I see that influence. Maybe some don't, and not everybody is everybody's cup of tea, right? But when I see the impact that he's had on you, that calming, stabilizing influence, and I see it coming not only from him, but you as well now, being that calming influence on the twins. Now, we didn't really get into detail, but you have 14-year-old twins. And, until he brought that into your life, you weren't able to give that to them. Because
right, it was a little
you
chaotic.
Didn't have it. Right. So
the effort was there. It just was still a little chaotic.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's still chaotic. I've spent time with you and all your kids, and it'll make your head spin at times.
It's a lot.
But tell me a little bit about how that influenced him being more experienced and older and wiser and all of those things. That how did that calming influence impact your life and how you manage the depression and all these other things?
So he is the calm to my storm. And I've heard that so many times and I always laughed because I'm like, yeah, right. But he is just very calm. Like he doesn't get worked up about things. If he does, he doesn't really show it. Where I'm like freaking out about the fact that there's no Christmas presents wrapped. And he's like, they'll get wrapped. It'll be fine. And I'm like, okay, if you think so, you know,
Sure.
and it's just the things like that I'm just like, he's always on time, which is very stressful to me. He likes to have, like, he likes
Because
to be a little
you,
bit
on the
early.
other hand, are never on time.
Correct. And, you know, I'm always like a last minute
Mhm.
type of person with everything. He's kind of fixing that slowly. He's making it better because I'm not real good at it. But slowly he's making it so I don't procrastinate as much. We're just still in the process of him kind of, okay, we're going to write more schedules, because I write schedules all
Mhm.
over the place, and then I like throw them here, throw them there. And not a good plan when you have all kind of children everywhere. But, you know, he's helping me with that. But I have to tell you, if we're going to talk about my husband, that as far as anything that I have to say about him, my ex-husband went through a custody situation last year.
Mhm.
And I have always had relationships with his little boy, my kid's little brother.
Right.
We've always had him on the weekends. We've always done fun things with him. And, you know, my husband was always fine with that. But he went through a custody situation, and my husband did not blink an eye when my ex-husband's like, I really need a babysitter Monday through Thursday in the evenings while I work. He didn't think anything of it.
Mhm.
And so now we just have a bonus child every week. And, you know, he's wonderful with him. He plays with him.
Very true story.
Yeah. I mean, I'm convinced one is going to teach something about Fortnite. I don't know. I don't think I know how many kills they're going to get. I can't really figure it out. But, you know, they do their thing. But the fact that he's able to not only, you know, accept Bentley, but treat him as one of our own.
Sure.
And also get along so well with my ex-husband, because they're like genuinely friends. You
Well,
know,
and
and that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal, and that makes me happy. And again, you know, you saw that coming out of your parents' divorce, right?
Correct.
And that example is being carried on now, and you guys are doing it right.
Yeah.
So, Alia, Mrs. Wiant, and I still giggle in calling you that, but that's neither here nor there. And so this has been a great conversation, and exactly what I had hoped we would talk about. So in wrapping up, in closing, you know, we talked about how there are serious illnesses that go unseen, right? So what you want to do is, I think there are way too many people who step back away from that stigma around mental health, and they don't ask for help. How hard was it for you? Because really, this is the first time you're really talking about this out loud outside of your family.
Yes. And to be honest, not all of my family knows. So if they watch this, some may be surprised. So, because there's part of my family that, you know, this really doesn't come up. And so it's not something that you would bring up or that they would understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't bring it up. And my mental health is still something that I'm learning to talk about. It's still something that even after all these years, I'm still learning how to reach out to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beginning to put myself out there in case somebody would need my help or would need to talk to me or feels like maybe they would be judged, because there is no reason. Again, if somebody judges you, that's on them.
That's on them. That is on them. And you can't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. And, in full disclosure, the people that know us know our relationship. But for those that don't, I'm Alia's awesome stepfather that she talked about earlier in the show. And so for the last 20 or so years, I've kind of walked this path with her from over here. And so the fact that you have stepped out to tell your story, and I've told you I've told you more than once how powerful your story is and how it needs to be told. And I'm very proud of you for coming here and talking openly about something that is not widely accepted. The cardiomyopathy is one thing. We didn't really talk about when I was on the board of the Fayette County chapter of the American Heart Association. We were talking at a board meeting about how heart this and they were looking for somebody to give a keynote, and I volunteered you.
You did.
And I raised your hand for you, and it was still new then because Livy was probably 5, 6 years old, something like that.
Yeah, she was teeny tiny.
She was maybe 5. And so not only did I volunteer you to speak, I volunteered Liv to do what they called the Open Your Heart campaign, which is where while you were speaking, volunteers were going around the room, and there were a few hundred people in the room at Nemacolin and Woodlands, and try to, with a basket.
With their baskets,
we Liv dressed up in a gown, and because it's a formal affair, and she went around with her little basket. And I believe at the time, Liv probably raised more money than anybody else ever had
at that point.
moment.
Yeah, at that point she had.
But that was really...
She doesn't take no for an answer.
No, she doesn't.
So, they would be like, "Oh, I don't have an envelope," and she would be like, "Let me go get you one."
I'll get you one. Yeah. So she was, she was great. And but you did great that evening. Really off the cuff. I mean, you spoke from the heart. No pun intended. But that was between then and now. You really haven't discussed the cardiomyopathy, let alone the depression, and that combination together is a lot.
It is. I think the depression and the anxiety for me, I'm not embarrassed about it, but I'm not open about it. It's not something. Now, if somebody would say, "Are you okay?" or "You seem like you're having a bad day. You seem quiet today," I would explain if it's somebody that I thought could understand. But it's also very easy for me, because I've done this for so long, to tell if it's a person who can understand.
Right.
Or if it's a person that I can probably explain it to, who could probably empathize.
Yeah. Does that
work? That didn't work. Empathize.
Does that empathy, I mean, obviously you don't have x-ray vision. You can't see what's going on in somebody, but are you able to recognize, because you're so in tune with that now, when somebody else is maybe a little bit off, or, can you sense where when somebody's having struggling to a certain extent?
Yes. So, for me, I can see the depression. I can see the anxiety in people. There's a lot of things that I see in kids, in adults, because not everything is the same. Not every symptom it's not the same at 70 years old or 60 years old as it is with a 5-year-old.
Right.
You know, there's a very big difference. And I think because I've had it so long and I've read so much about it, I am by far not a doctor. I'm not a therapist.
Sure.
But yeah, you learn the triggers, and you learn what characteristics things have, and you do notice them.
And so, in closing, what I would like to do is everybody who is watching this, anybody who's, if you know anyone, encourage them to reach out and ask for help. And Alia is on social media. She's on Facebook and Instagram and all of these things. And she is very open. I know you are open to talking with people. If you don't want to go anything publicly, send her a message, reach out to her. And it really helps just to talk to somebody and get it out there. And that listening, that is the most important thing that you can do for somebody.
Yep. And sometimes it's, sometimes you don't want to go to a therapist. Sometimes you don't have insurance to go to a therapist. Sometimes you don't want anyone to know how you're feeling because you're worried that, something you could say could get your child taken away. Or, there's people that are very concerned because, if they feel suicidal, are they going to put them in a hospital? And there's things like that. There are people that you can reach out to that won't happen, that you can feel safe talking to. And, that won't happen, but they are trained to tell you how to get through that.
Sure. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do if somebody does reach out to you, okay, is try to guide them to a professional that can get them what they need, right?
Yeah.
But you always should open your heart and listen to anybody that has an issue of any kind, even not the extremes that we're discussing, but just somebody could be carrying something heavy. You don't know what's going on inside somebody's heart, inside their mind. So please be kind, be patient with people, be compassionate, and try to understand that not everybody is what they may seem on the surface.
Yes, because probably a lot of the people that you are around daily are suffering with things that you have no idea.
Right.
They're just barely holding it together. And you should be very careful, and you should be the one to help them hold it together.
There you go. Well, listen, on that note, sweetheart, I want to thank you for coming. I'm very happy you came. I'm very proud of you for sharing your story, and I love you very much. Thank you.
I love you too.